Hey everybody, RoseCloud9 here, and today I'm going to be doing a video on how to work with clear pieces. This is going to be polishing up canopies, fixing scratches on canopies, and masking canopy pieces. So we're going to need a couple tools to start with. So when we're taking out our clear pieces, the first thing to remember is even though this is styrene, it doesn't like to behave as normal styrene does. These parts here are from my Tamiya 1/32 scale A6M2b Zero. Previously, when I had built this, I painted it all up and it looked good, and I decided to dip them in future polish. And dipping them in future polish is supposed to give it a better shine, but it didn't exactly do that. I got hairs on it and I didn't like them, so what I did is I dipped them in Windex for about 5 minutes and took an older toothbrush and just scrubbed them down nice and clean. So now I have them back in their original state. And looking at them in their original state, I can see some unfortunate scratches on here. And I don't really want to keep these scratches around. I'd really like to just clean these up and be able to look at the model through this freshly cleaned window. So one of the first things that you're going to need, if the scratches are severe, you'll need something like this Squadron 3 Grit Premium Sanding Stick. And I have the number for it right here. If you're looking for it, it is 30505. This is the number for this. It is a shaping, buffing, polishing. So we've got this one here, and this one has a bit of a texture to it. And we have this one here. You can't really feel it at all. You have this larger gray one on the back, and it basically feels like plastic, but it is in fact a polishing grit on the back. This will run you, the most you'll pay for this is about $5. These are usually about $3.50 online. They're pretty easy to find. So what you're also going to need for your scratches is a combination of at least these two. You're going to need some Novus 1 and some Novus 2. Now there is Novus 3, it is a green bottle, and it is for more deep scratches. You can buy that and try it out if you like. But for this, I think I'm only going to need these two. In particular, right now, we're going to use Novus 2. So I'm going to shake it up here. And we're going to grab some cotton swabs. Now, if the damage on the window was pretty bad, like there's a nice line right here from an X-Acto knife. I'm not exactly sure how that even got on there, but it's on the inside. So why don't we try actually cleaning that off? So we're going to use this rough grit first, and we're going to go back and forth like this, and you can see we're actually fogging up the window. The clear part there is all fogged up, and it looks terrible, and you're panicking right now. You know, you're thinking, oh my goodness, I've ruined my model. But that's about all you need. Good news is you're not actually ruining your model. It's going to be safe. We're going to just keep moving on to the white grit here. Move back and forth. And already we can see it's starting to become a bit clearer. Still there. In fact, I can still see the line there. So I'm going to move back to the black grit. Just hold it up to the light there. That seems to be gone. So yeah, let's go back to the white. And finally, we're going to move on to the gray. And now we should really start to see it disappearing here. So there we go. Now it's just kind of foggy. It's about where we want it to be. Most of that seam line is gone. So we're going to move on to Novus 2. And wipe a bit of it on the cotton swab here. And here we're just going to rub it back and forth. And usually you want to apply quite a bit of this stuff. And you just keep working it in, back and forth, basically until you've used up all the Novus. So just keep rubbing it back and forth, and once the Novus runs out and it becomes clear again, that should usually be your indication that we've gotten rid of the Novus and it's done its job. So here I'm actually getting pretty close to that. So now what you want to do is you want to take your Novus again and rub it in a piece of cotton. Tamiya makes polishing cloths for this type of thing, but some old fabric will work just as well. So there we go. Now I can still see the line there from the X-Acto knife, which means it was just a bit thinner or deeper than I thought, but for the most part it's actually gone, and all those scratches that we had in there originally, they're all gone. So what I'm going to go and do now is use the same sort of thing, and I'm going to go clean up the rest of the model, and I'll come back when it's time to use some Novus 1. Okay, I've taped up and cleaned. First off, I've cleaned and polished up both of these windows here, and I already started taping these up here just to kind of get ahead of the game. And so we're going to need a couple tools for beginning to tape these up. Now, you might not want to try this at home. You might want to buy masks or hand paint your windows, and that's okay. Guys, when you're doing this type of thing, it's kind of, you have to accept the fact that you could damage the windows. It's just an inevitability that could occur when you're doing this, because you're working with a very sharp knife on clear pieces, and sometimes they just don't behave like they should. So what I have here, this is Tamiya tape. I like to use this stuff quite a bit because it has very good tack. It is a bit transparent, and it really holds its own pretty well. It's nice to airbrush. It's fairly thin stuff to use. So as far as other tools that we're going to need, as far as a good tape, again, the Tamiya tape works really well. We're going to need some kind of a burnishing tools. Now I have a couple here. This is just a normal Q-tip, or toothpick, rather. And this is part of my nail file. It has a blunt end on the top here. And make sure it's something blunt and not sharp, that you're accidentally going to scratch through the pieces. So, I've cleaned up, I polished this up with Novus just so I can make sure there were no scratches hiding. It all looks pretty good. I'm quite happy with that. The next thing we're going to need is a brand new X-Acto blade. Again, you're going to need to keep a sharp blade in here. Why? Well, you want to cut through this tape without having to put a lot of force on it. And the more force that you're required to push on it, the more you might accidentally damage the window, especially if you messed up the first time and you want to try this again. Now, as I mentioned before, this might not be the solution that you want to use. Like I said, there's plenty of companies out there, even some that come with masks in them. Tamiya makes them, Edward make them. Some of the ones that come with the Tamiya kit, you just cut out along the lines, and you put them on here, and you're good to go. Edward and a couple other companies, they make pre-cut, so they're basically like a sticker. You just pick them off, peel them, and away you go. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to place this down. This is the Tamiya fat tape, or Kamoi tape. And so we're just going to press it down here and get out all the bubbles. Now, the next thing you're going to want is a nice light source. And I've got my desk lamp right here. So I'm going to adjust the camera here for a moment. If you'll bear with me. Hope I can get this in the proper frame. So, let's take our knife here, and I want to hold it. I gotta go up higher. A little higher. So what I want to do is I want to hold it about like this, so I can look through and I can see, because of the bright light, I can see through the frame. So now what I want to do is push down and burnish the edges. This is all the places I'm going to need to cut. You can also use your fingernail. At times works fairly well. But there we go. Okay. So, now what to do? Take our fresh hobby knife, and this is where you got to be very careful. There we go. Nice straight lines. Okay. So I'm just going to peel this off here. And come on, I got to get this one here on the bottom. And last piece there is the bottom. I'm going to go trim that up again on my own in just a little bit. Let me just put this down again. There we go. So that's basically it. If you have a good light source, you can do this. It's best if you have nice frames to work with. Pending whatever model kit it is that you are working on, that is entirely up to the company. But that is the basics for putting on masks like that. It's just very, very slow work. You do not want to go fast at it. You want to be as slow as you can. It does take time. Masks are easier to go at. They do cost a bit sometimes, and that's kind of where the price gap is for me, because a lot of times a mask set like this could cost me $12, $15 and another $15 for shipping. So that's a total of $30, and I have to wait 3 weeks for it to get here, or I could spend maybe 3 hours in total and mask these all off on my own, and I'd have a job I was quite satisfied with. So my next step is I'm going to take these clear pieces, I'm going to tape the insides of them so I can't get any paint in there, and I'm going to go and airbrush these, and when I come back we will deal with cleaning painted canopies. Alright, so now these are all painted up, and now comes the part of removing the masks. Now, when you're painting this stuff on and you have a hand brush or whatever, it's best, even with an airbrush, it's always best to do this in layers. Layer and layer and layer and layer. Very, very thin layers. You don't want to have too much excess buildup. So now comes the question, how do I get rid of these masks without damaging the clear parts? Now, there's a couple things you can do. Some people use their X-Acto knives, but you're going to want to use something like a toothpick like this, or some nice tweezers. But what you can do is you can very, very carefully glide your X-Acto knife just under a corner. And all you want to do is just lift it up just a slight bit here. Enough so your tweezers can pinch hold of it and just pull them up. Now when you're pulling these things up, peel it just a little slowly against the lines like that. And they should just lift up like that. So the other one you can use here is something like a toothpick, which is more blunt, and we just kind of again pick at a corner, and we've got a little bit that we can grab, and here we go. So I'm going to go and remove the rest of these. It's just that simple, really. You just want to be careful where you're grabbing the windows and make sure you don't accidentally scratch them or scratch the paint. So take your time, be careful with whatever it is you're masking, or at this point unmasking, and you shouldn't have any real problems with it. Now, unfortunately, some of the maskings either didn't fit as well as I'd like, they weren't as snug, and some of them bled through. And so, what do? Do you dip it in Windex and start all over again? Well, no, there's actually another method you can use after, when you have the paint on here, that you can further clean up the windows. It is, again, a bit of a risky move, but it works. Now, Rob at Basic Modeling has taught me a lot of tips and tricks over the years, and this one is probably one of the best I've ever learned in the history of modeling ever, because painting clear parts is one of those hard things to do, especially if you're doing it by hand, which is one of those things that I was doing a lot back in the day, and I still do today, and I still use this technique all the time. So, the paint has been dry for, I would say, almost 6 hours, and so it's still fairly loose. Now, clear parts don't really take paint that well. That's one of the first things you need to know. So we're going to remove a bit of the paint, but you have to be very careful doing this. And all you need is a toothpick like this. The edge has been blunted up just a little bit so it's not too pointy. If I want it pointier, I can go ahead and grab another one for all the corners and stuff like that. But I want something a little blunt like this. Now, all we're going to do here, now I can see a bit of it is fogged over here, and we just take the toothpick and we rub it back and forth and scratch it. And it's removing the paint. It's really a cool little process here. So what I'm going to go do now is I'm going to touch up all the windows and get them nice and clean. Like here in the corner, I got a little bit of excess in there. I didn't quite get this line straight. It's at a bit of an angle, so I'm going to fix that. Now, the one thing you have to know when you're doing something like this is don't push too hard. If you're not getting rid of the paint, leave it alone. You can come back to it, say 3 days later, let the paint cure and harden. The other thing too is if you're doing this and you start going kind of too vigorously, you can actually damage the paint on the frames. It'll kind of peel itself apart. So take your time, be careful, and again, don't press too hard, because then you can cause actually more scratches on the clear surface. I've done that several times. So take a spare window or clear sprue or whatever and give this a try, give it some practice before you attempt it on your model, and it should work out pretty well. So, you know, I'm looking at this and there's not too much to clean up on here, which is pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that, but you never know what little bits will slip through in the end. So again, you just take a toothpick here and you just scratch it clean. Be careful with it. Maybe keep it at a bit of an angle instead of up and down like this, so you kind of go at it like that. And take your time. Be careful. You don't want to have to remask and repaint your window again. Alright, we've gone through all that trouble of cleaning up the windows here, and now we have to clean them again. So we're going to take some Novus 1 and dab it on in here. And you need to clean up the inside of the windows first. Don't worry about the outside of the windows, because you're going to be handling that when we glue them down. So we're getting pretty close to doing just that. But we want to get the windows nice and clean on the inside, because we're going to glue these down and you don't want to have to worry about fingerprints or dust or anything else hiding in behind there. So go ahead and take some time, clean these up, and like I said, don't worry about the exterior, because you're going to be able to polish all that up once the windows are firmly glued on there. So there we go. So getting that to a good point. Quite like it. So there we go. So let's go finish cleaning these, and the next step is how to glue them on. All the parts are now cleaned up on the inside. Again, remember, don't worry about the outside. That's going to be like the last step. And so now we have to glue the windows down. Now there's a couple products that you can use here. I'm going to just show a few. This is one that I've used. This is Elmer's clear glue. It's acrylic. Again, it dries clear because it already is clear, so you don't have to worry about it. A lot of the white glues as well, they usually dry clear. Some of them dry milky, which is why I went with this clear stuff here. And this works pretty well. It takes a little while longer to dry, and it's actually fairly strong. I've had a couple models where it's pretty tight. Sometimes you bump it and they fall off, and I've had that happen a few times with this stuff here. The next stuff that I bought is Micro Crystal Clear, and this is by far the strongest glue that I've used. The only thing about it though is it takes quite a while to dry properly. It takes about a week to really cure and harden to kind of a rock solid state. And this is a very, very nice stuff because you can also make tiny little windows out of this glue, which is pretty cool. And the last option you do have is Future Floor Polish. And I've seen some modelers glue this stuff down and they just apply it and it dries hard. Kind of one of the downsides to using Future is you really can't handle the model for a while. And I've tried it, it does work, but to me in some models it doesn't seem to be as strong as using a glue. So I'm going to use Micro Crystal Clear because I really like this stuff. And I'm going to use a toothpick here to apply it. So I'm going to grab the sides of the window. I'm going to do the front canopy here. And you just kind of roll it on all of the edges. Like I said, this stuff takes a little while longer to dry. But it's very, very hard stuff, which I like. I'm not going to have to worry about bumping it off and really, damaging the part, which is always nice. Okay, and a little bit there on the sides. So I just wipe this off. And so let's put it here on the model. Oh, there's a little bit of excess glue that I missed. Let me just take this off if I can. Okay, there we go, that'll be enough. So I'm just going to set it on the front first and the sides. And there we go. Okay, now we've set the window in like that, and you can see maybe that a bit of it has punctured through at the ends there. So we need to clean that little bit of glue up. So take kind of a fairly long-haired brush and dip it in some water. And because this stuff is acrylic, this is a little difficult to do on a big model like this, you just wipe it off. And do this pretty quick, guys. Don't wait. Just wipe it off like that, and it'll just wash that little bit away, and it's not going to interfere with the rest of the glue. So I'm going to do the same the other side here, and there we go. So that looks pretty darn good. I'm quite happy with that. I'm just going to keep applying just a little bit of pressure on it. The fit is really good, so I don't have to worry about that, and it looks like the glue is covered in all areas. So now it's time to go do the back one, and yeah, we're nearly done the process here. So before I did all this stuff on here, the window was covered with Future, didn't look that good, and the last step here, I've just added a bit of Novus 1 on the end of this cotton swab. I'm just going to polish it off like this. And there I have this really nice shiny canopy section. I'm not going to dip it in Future again. I don't really like dipping the clear parts in Future. Like I said before, there was a couple hairs that were stuck in there. And there's really no way to get them out without dunking it again and trying it. Not to mention, this way is a lot brighter. I can look through, I can see the canopy, I can see through it, and the last one is just this piece right here. And clip it back in place, and there we go. Now I've got this nice clear canopy, and these are the steps that you can take as well to achieving the results of fixing clear parts, gluing them, cleaning them, polishing them up, and it's really quite simple to do. Granted, this isn't the only way how to do it. There are a couple other ways to do this. This is just the way that I like to do it, and I'm quite happy with the end results. Looking back at the windows now that they've been airbrushed, before I hand painted them on there, and now that they're airbrushed on there, I can actually see a lot more detail, and I'm a lot happier with the final result of this aircraft. I finally got it to the result that I want, and it looks a lot better now. And like I said, I can actually see through all this detail a lot clearer now that I've removed all that future and stuff on there. So, if this might work for you, please by all means give it a try. If you have any questions, please leave them down below. I will do my best to answer them as soon as possible. Um, and if this doesn't work for you, you know, go and see what else will work. If you have any better suggestions, by all means, please leave them down in the comments. There's not one solution to any problem. There's plenty of other ways to do this, and some of them a lot of us maybe haven't even heard of yet. And it's just a good idea that you have that might just be better than this. But like I said, I'm really happy with the end results. The canopy is a lot clearer. It looks a lot better. And I'm going to go put this thing back on my shelf and just stare at it for a little while. Because it's Zero. Yeah, you know. Anyways, guys, this is Robles at Cloud9. If I haven't taught you anything, at least you've learned what not to do. I'll see you guys later.